J.R. Ewing from Dallas, Texas Rancher Girl Hat. Yeah. Well, I took a overzealous approach to cutting my hair yesterday, and sadly I have some tufts sprouting at the top, which I thought would be a little bit distracting. So this is just covering up a bad haircut. And why am I in autumnal gear, you might ask? Well, we've reached autumn. So for the next 6 months, it's going to be a chilly willy. I'm not a fan of autumn and winter in the UK. My dream is to spend half the year in the UK and half the year somewhere hot. That would be the best of both worlds. Summer in the UK is amazing. Otherwise, everyone's energy sort of tanks, and it's just, I don't know, it's not fun to be here in autumn and winter. Today we have a drum and bass ride in Sheffield, which is up north, which I didn't go to. I'm not going to. It's a little bit far. I've said to you guys that 2 hours max is my kind of allowance for traveling to these drum and bass rides. I make an exception for the European ones, obviously, because I have to wait around at the airport for check-in and that kind of thing. So that's the reason, but also my knee is still not fully recovered. But Sheffield is actually one place I would have liked to have really gone to. There's one other location up north that I would have liked to go to. These are two places I've never been to, Sheffield being one. I think Sheffield's interesting to me because I've heard it's really hilly, and you know, being a glutton for punishment, I quite like the idea of pushing myself on these hills. So that's why Sheffield sort of appealed. And Sheffield is, I don't know why I'm talking about Sheffield in so much detail. Sheffield people, I believe, have a Yorkshire accent, and I quite like the, I've talked about him before, Sharp. What's his name, you guys? I've forgotten his name. The Lady Chatterley's lover actor. He's got a very broad Yorkshire accent. Quite like the sound of it. So I was sad to hear about Charlie Kirk. I actually don't know anything about him at all, and I wasn't sure if I was going to discuss him because it feels sort of disingenuous to discuss someone that you don't know anything about. I did know of him when he first came out. I think when he first came out with Candace Owens, this was years back. I remember thinking, as you know, I'm not political in any way, shape, or form, and I don't watch political commentary. The only reason I've recently started watching that type of commentary is because obviously it affects my native roots, and I needed to know what was going on and understand more about history and that type of thing. Otherwise, I don't spend my time on it in any meaningful way. And because I don't have the knowledge that other people do, I tend not to talk about it with people because I just don't have the right information to be able to talk about it. But I did remember him when he first came out with Candace Owens, and I really love when young people or anyone of any age does something that they're really passionate about and just does something new. I like people who are trailblazers and who do different things, unusual things. I do remember thinking at that time, what an odd interest to have for someone so young, but in an amused sort of way, as in all power to you type of way. And that the fact that they were able to travel to the UK and internationally with this passion was really fascinating to me. Anyone who can create a job where they're able to travel, I'm all for it. So that's all I really knew about him. And then in the past couple of days, I've just kind of gone back to watch a few things with him on it. One being the Jubilee debates. And then the other was this morning. I just caught him at Cambridge University because I thought, well, I've seen him debating with American students. Let me see if there's a more there's a better representation of students. So that's why I went to watch the Cambridge students. I think he's also done Oxford Union. So you probably know that the narrative that they're giving out is not one that I believe. Mr. Kirk was starting to find out information that they didn't want him to find out, or was going against the grain. And with the platform that he has, that's obviously a very dangerous position for these people. And so, yeah, of course, I don't believe what they're selling, what they're putting out. And in fact, it's very curious, isn't it, how it's all happening at a point when he was starting to question things, and also when they're trying to take off the heat of the President of the United States, and also these occupiers who are going into and attacking countries without impunity. So I won't say any further than that. I get punished terribly on YouTube because YouTube picks up all the keywords. And yeah, they really do punish me. And obviously, I do want people to come onto my channel, even though I've always tried to keep it very small. But I think you understand. I think everyone's eyes are wide open. So I'm sure many people will have the same thinking as I do. Nonetheless, that's a separate issue. I was very, very sad to see the type of responses to his death, in that I can't imagine anyone being happy about someone who has a viewpoint being killed. It surprises me and disappoints me. I don't know how we came to this point in humanity when people feel pleasure at someone's life being taken away, at someone's son, brother, uncle, father, husband being taken away. And I especially found it sad because I always find it sad when young people lose their life, especially in these types of circumstances. But the loss of potential I find very, very sad. His life was just beginning. It hadn't even begun yet. And that's incredibly sad, I think, especially when someone loves their life. I think it can be a different story when someone's not happy with their life and they don't want to be in this world. But when you can see that someone loves their life and loves what they do, and that they're being silenced, not by who you think they're being silenced by, but they're being silenced because they may be a threat to ... You can connect all the dots yourself. So I did go back and watch a couple of his videos, and one of the things I find really shocking, especially when I watched the Jubilee video, I think it was yesterday maybe, or the day before, is that there's this very strange thing that's happening, and I've noticed it for a while. It's like people are not allowed to have their own opinions, and I find this such a bizarre way of living. Everyone has a right to their own opinion, and in the same way that I have a right to my opinion, I don't begrudge anyone else about having their opinion. There are some opinions that are incredibly dangerous. Obviously, an opinion like these occupiers not committing genocide. Well, that's a very dangerous opinion to have, because obviously we can see that that is what's happening. So there are opinions like that that are incredibly dangerous. Nonetheless, you still have the right to your opinion. And when I was growing up, nothing was really political. When I think back to all my friends, all my acquaintances, all the people that I've been, well, it's not all, the people that I've been in relationships with or dated, I actually don't know any of their politics at all, apart from one person who I comment on frequently on my channel, and that is my psychopathic acquaintance I'm not in touch with anymore, who was really passionate about politics, and his whole world revolved around it, as in it would come up in every conversation. And I remember always finding it so interesting how he could take any conversation and turn it into a political conversation. It's something that never comes up in my conversations with people. So I found it a kind of talent that he was able to do that. And his views were very, very conservative. I think I'm a traditional person, but I'm a very open-minded person, as in you can have whatever view you want, as long as I'm also allowed to have the view that I want. So did it get in the way of our relationship, friendship, acquaintanceship? No, because I'm not a judgmental person. And I think he recognized that it wasn't an interest of mine. So the conversations that he would have with me would be very, very surface layer from my end, because I just didn't have enough knowledge. But I think one thing that I do have is sense. I was about to say common sense, and then I thought, wow, common sense is not so common these days. So I think one thing that I do have is sense. And so any conversation that I have with someone, if that's the type of conversation they want to have with me, comes from a place of sense. And I think a lot of what's happening in the world is that people are losing sense. But also, watching this Jubilee video, I was really horrified by the way they spoke to Charlie, especially a couple of the girls. It was quite, he even mentioned it himself, it was quite nasty, the place that they took it to. I've always thought that someone who is offended by the view that you have and attacks you for the view that you have doesn't have a sense of confidence. Because if you're a confident person, why would someone else's view affect you? Like I said, there are some views that are very dangerous, but we just have to accept that in a free world, you're going to have those types of people and thinking. But otherwise, why would someone's different thinking affect you? Is it because you think, well, politically, as in the laws that are created are based on this type of dangerous thinking? Okay, sure, I can accept that. But even then, well, my counter argument to that is, well, you have a right to vote like anyone else does. And then you could say to me, well, we know that it's all dodgy and all corrupt. Yes, I don't know what we can do about that. But maybe the reason we've got to this place is because not enough people are educated to, and by educated, when I use the word educated, I don't mean that you have to go to university. In fact, one of the things that I found really interesting about this Jubilee video was that I think all these people that were debating Charlie have been to university and he hasn't been to university. Being educated doesn't mean that you went to university. Being educated means that you can think for yourself and think logically, and of course with passion. being logical doesn't mean that you don't have passion. One of the most interesting people I've ever seen debating, I can't, the Arabic gentleman. I don't know if he's not Palestinian, I don't think. Yusuf, Bassam Yusuf, is that his name? The very charming, handsome, and witty gentleman who spoke about what was going on in the occupied territory in such an passionate and heartfelt way. Yusuf. Sorry that I can't remember. Bassam Yusuf. Yeah, you can watch that interview of his on that very odd and shill of a man. That man who is under the thumb, who's being paid to say the things that he says. That's passion, and it's fine to be passionate. It's okay to be passionate, but I was surprised at the way that these so-called university graduates were debating. It's almost like they just want to have a gotcha moment rather than trying to understand what he's saying. And I think when you behave like that, the other person automatically goes on the defensive, and it takes a very confident and very secure person not to go on the defensive when they're being attacked like that. And then when he was at the Cambridge talks, there was only one person who didn't take what he was saying personally, and that was actually a professor, I think, at the university who went up to debate him. So, you know, I think he comes across to me as a pleasant chap, and I don't look at him and think, oh, I don't agree with this, and I do agree with this, and I just look at him and think he was a human being who had a right to have the opinions that he did. And if you are threatened by his opinions, then either you don't have enough confidence in your opinions. I think that's it. You don't have enough confidence in your opinions to be secure, and you do not want to live in a world where democracy and being able to freely discuss what you want is part of a healthy society. I mean, I can't talk about all the things that I want to talk about because I get punished by YouTube. And secondly, unfortunately, we are in a position now where disabled and blind people, that's right, disabled and blind people are being arrested for peaceful protests in the UK. And thirdly, politics doesn't interest me enough to spend time talking about it on this channel. Injustice is important. Injustice is important enough to talk about. But politics, as I've mentioned before, it's just two sides of the same coin. They're one and the same. And I think that's why I've always found it surprising when people say, you know, I'm on the left or I'm on the right. Why not just be neither and just use sense to make sense of this fascinating world that we live in? So when I was thinking about all the people that I've ever interacted with and spent time with, it's true that I think none of them are particularly political, or it just never comes up in my conversations with them. The exception being the gentleman that I spoke about before. But because I'm not a judgmental person, it was never a point of contention that he had some very unusual views, in my opinion. And I think he felt free to discuss them because I didn't lambast him for those views. We just agreed to disagree. And I think that's Isn't that what normal and civil discourse is about? Just agreeing to disagree. What did I think about the Cambridge children, youngsters? They spoke better than the Americans. So something is seriously going wrong in American universities and culture, perhaps. But even so, I'm surprised at the level of, when you think about Oxford and Cambridge, you think that these these universities are the best of the best. But I have watched several. I think this is the first time I've watched a Cambridge debate, but in the past I have watched Oxford debates, and I've always been surprised at um, I've been surprised that the level of debating skills and intellect isn't as high as I would expect from someone who's attending Oxford, say. So something has changed, and yeah, it's incredibly disappointing that you have people who are happy or satisfied that someone has lost their life. That's against humanity. It's inhumane. And to lack empathy and understanding and sympathy for that, something has seriously gone wrong. That's all I really wanted to say about that. Today, I am going to be. I think I'm going to leave it there, you guys. I think it's a good note to leave it on. Did I want to say anything else about this? Oh, this is the final thing I wanted to say. It was a clear message. It was a clear message to Miss Owens and other people who are starting to think for themselves that this is the kind of thing that will happen if you go against what they want you to say or think to your audience of listeners. Yeah, scary times, scary times.